Hey, it's Jacques over in the Exercise Design Lab. So, blind spots. These are tricky because these are parts of ourselves that sometimes we actively avoid. And sometimes it's just a passive thing. It's something that you just can't fathom is really a part of who you are. Now, in order to see these blind spots, we can't bring along our critical selves. We can't bring along that part of you that's even defensive and protective. So the first thing that we have to learn how to do is to be genuinely kind to ourselves, to be genuinely curious about ourselves, to be genuinely compassionate toward ourselves. And the only way that I know to get there is through meditation. Now, I'm not going to tell you how to meditate. I've got my preferences in terms of the practice that I use, but you can find whatever works for you. The only thing I will encourage you, though, is to find something that doesn't require a lot of props. Something that you can do just about anywhere, something that doesn't require special music or incense or a chair or somebody talking to you in your ear or something like that, but something that you can just drop into. The other thing I'll say about meditating is that depending on where you read about it, what source you use, they might recommend doing, a half hour or an hour a day or multiple times a day. And that can feel daunting. So I want you to think about this. Whatever method you use, see if you can start with 2 minutes a day. That's it. 2 minutes. Even if after that 2 minutes I got this. 2 minutes. And then the next day you're going to add 30 seconds. And you're just going to keep adding 30 seconds a day until you get to whatever the recommended time is for the meditation that you're looking into. Okay? So that's the ground. Developing a meditation practice so that we can be kind to ourselves, so that when we start to ask these really sensitive questions, we can be honest, knowing that the critical Jacques is not going to jump in there, knowing that the defensive Jacques is not going to jump in there, but that my mind will allow for free and honest exploration. So the next step is to discover your strengths, because what's interesting is that sometimes the opposite of your strength or around the corner from your strength is one of your blind spots. So you can use any number of tools out there that help you to find your strengths, or you can just make a list yourself, that's fine too. But there's something called Clifton Strengths 34 that I highly recommend. You can Google that and you can take that evaluation. Once you have your strengths, then there's some questions that you can start to ask yourself. What are you most afraid of right now? And then once you have that identified, as well as you can, ask yourself, what action would you take if that event, if that thing were to happen right now? As a result of that action, would you be any closer to finding a solution? The next question is, did your action create suffering, damage, or pain for you or for anybody else? For example, one of my strengths is that I'm a relator, which means that I really enjoy deep relationships with my friends. I really enjoy working with my friends, collaborating with them on goals, missions that we're doing together. When I think about what I'm most afraid of right now is I'm afraid of disappointing my friends. I'm afraid of sharing bad news with them about my own failure, about something that I've forgotten to do, or that I made a poor decision, or that I just completely messed up. I'm terrified of that. The action that I used to take was I would do anything not to share my mistake, my poor decision. I would do anything to cover it up and make it so that no one ever found out about it. All the things that I would do to try to keep that information to myself did not lead to solving the problem. So could my action of trying to cover up my mistakes, my misjudgments, my blown assignments, could that create undue suffering for other people, undue pain for other people, undue damage to other people, and undue damage and suffering and pain to myself? Absolutely. So how do you create mind flows or these experiences in an exercise environment that allow you to work on these things? Well, here's what I did. I continually seek scenarios where I am working with people who are well beyond my ability. And in working with them, developing relationships with them, I want to do well. I want to do well in terms of our common goal. So I've set up the same scenario that if I make a mistake, if I fall short, if I make a poor decision, I'm gonna have to work on that skill of communicating and figuring out how do I rely on my team as well as myself to help to come up with a solution. So one scenario is doing mountain running. These guys are fast. And if I want to keep up, I've got to stay on top of my training. I've got to stay on top of my nutrition, on top of my sleep. And if I blow it, I can't fake it. I can't pretend like, oh, I can keep up. I just can't. So I have to figure out ways of trying to stay accountable. But when I mess up, when things go wrong, or when I take the wrong path, I've got to figure out ways of managing that discomfort of knowing, man, I let my team down. Man, I did something really stupid. So I know I have to do some work there for sure. And that has been a part of my practice of trying to become a better version of myself every day. So think about designing exercise scenarios that help you to work on those blind spots. And I tell you, as you start to work on one, you'll start to see others because for every strength that you have, I promise you, there is this blind spot either on the other side or just around the corner.